At a high level, what does your company do?
We mobilize our customers' data on behalf of them to increase revenue and stabilization of their website. We work with e-commerce companies to deliver their brand experience online, have better performance and availability for their customers. Our job is to design a solution that overcomes many of the challenges that they don't know how to deal with. Keep the site available first off, and then keep it fast, and then transacting business.
How has AI changed e-commerce forever?
Adjust the design and layout of your site to meet what those customers want. Surface the product earlier, faster, so they don't even have to have the conversation.
How should merchants adapt to the new AI era?
They should not wait and jump in. It's a tool that can help in all facets of your business.
Could AI eventually own most of the customer journey?
No, I don't think so. Depends on your journey as a customer.
How big of a problem are bots in e-commerce?
Huge.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Jay Smith, the CEO of Webscale Networks. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So at a high level, what does your company do?
I think at our core, what we do is we mobilize our customers' data on behalf of them to increase revenue and stabilization of their websites. So historically, that meant mostly as an e-commerce. So we work with e-commerce companies to deliver their brand experience online. And part of that is using data to understand who are the actual customers, who are the bot networks, filter out the bot networks, help them have better performance and availability for their customers to make more money. And then in recent years, with the advent of AI, we've been leveraging all that clickstream data to help the brands understand how to better surface products for their customers. So creating conversational agents that sit on site to recommend products, help do product discovery and search and research on products, as well as doing customer service and pretty much you name it. If a customer needs to talk to the brand about it, our agents sit in and can be customized and tailored to meet that need. So
Awesome. Who is it built for?
e-commerce companies, pretty much predominantly. It's a mixture of some very large B2B sites. Typically it's complex commerce. So somebody that has a unique need in the industry, be it regulation, we do a lot of HIPAA compliance, as well as customers that move massive amounts of data and high volume requests. So big in the Boolean space with, folks that buy and sell gold to, just about everything. So yeah, we've got brands in a variety of places, and the common thread to them, and there's some complexity, be it compliance, or it's a hard to solve problem, or they have some complicated network that they need to deal with, some collection of services that maybe a more traditional or simpler service can't provide. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What problem were you initially solving?
Decentralized resource management. So
Wow.
my PhD is in parallel distributed systems, specifically the robust resource allocation within those systems. And along the way, we wrote a paper about achieving an optimal resource allocation solution without ever having to talk to each other. And it was right around the time that cloud computing was getting big, and people were starting to do interesting things with cloud computing. I think the New York Times had announced, we had digitized the entire archive of the New York Times. We did with AWS. Well, no one at the time was surfacing online content. Now, today, you'd think, oh, well, that's crazy. Of course you would go to cloud. Why would I own a machine? But we were surfacing these these kind of real-time scheduling problems, which is what a website really is, and then having indications of when to auto scale and identifying that the system was under provisioned and needed more resources, and we got that directly out of the resource allocation algorithm that we're running in the proxy, we call it. So the request from the internet, CDN hits the proxy routes it to the web server. But in that proxy ran our algorithm that allowed us to achieve an optimal result without these things ever talking to each other. So you didn't have to coordinate; it just kind of worked, and that was really the basis for the whole company. We initially didn't start to go into e-commerce. We just started, and then we found a home in e-commerce really quickly because the people with websites that had money, revenue to protect, where they would actually pay us for our service, they were all in e-commerce. So, and they were an underserved community technology wise. They were still using PHP. In fact, many of them still use PHP today. And they just did lots of challenges, and we had solutions. So, marriage made in heaven, I guess.
What is commerce infrastructure in simple terms?
In simple terms, I don't
Yeah.
know if they're simple. It's a distributed system. So you have specialization of service, you have things to consider. The problems are availability, so blast radius, something fails, what goes with it, and can the site survive that? Our customers often are measuring in the thousands to millions of dollars a day, and well, it's always more than thousands, but it's kind of they can tell you exactly how many checkouts they lose and how much that costs them for every minute of downtime. And so, our job is to design a solution that overcomes many of the challenges that they don't know how to deal with. So, keep the site available first off, and then keep it fast, and then transacting business. So, not kind of a non-answer. I don't know. There's a simple one. It's a website.
Yeah.
It's a big website that has a lot of revenue tied to it, and a lot of people's lives and jobs tied to it. And so, our job is to keep it functioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why does website speed matter so much for revenue?
You're impatient. Pretty much everybody in the internet wants it. They want things to pop. It has to come really quickly. And if it's too slow or they can't get the answer they're looking for, I mean, anymore, they'll go to AI to find the answer, right? So this is something with our AI services. You've got customers that come to site and they'll start looking up a product and then they want to ask a question. And if you don't have the ability to answer the question, their first response is to go to ChatGPT. And now they're seeing your competitors and they're trying to find the answer to their question. And in the process of finding the answer to the question, they're actually finding other solutions or other merchants that have the same product, and you lose them. So our job is to help them use the data that they already have. Like they already have all the information about the product. They can answer the question, and we have to mobilize it for them so that they can communicate to their customer directly.
Yeah. How did your background in machine learning and high performance computing get you to where you are now?
What's happened recently with the advent of LLMs and sort of the pervasive nature of intelligence in that way. Intelligence, it's kind of too vague a term, but being able to translate, right? So these things are all fundamentally the LLM, fundamentally a translator. That's what the DeepMind group was doing initially. And so that translator, the fact that I could take Claude and embed it in a spreadsheet and understand the spreadsheet, or some facet of the business, and it could talk to me as kind of the data scientist that I am, then I can understand those pieces of the business. And that I think is an interesting question because my background is in computer engineering. It's not CEO. I didn't go to business school. Um, the technology has made it to so that I can understand those parts of the business that I don't necessarily have access to. And I think having a good team around me that are experts in their own domain has sort of made me able to communicate with them and ask intelligent questions about how that part of the business is functioning, and then synthesize that data into a view of the company and how it's functioning so that we are successful. So see the biggest problem of the day and then go attack it, I guess is another way to say that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
How has AI changed e-commerce forever?
An interesting question. I think fundamentally, I mean, there's the obvious new channel, right? So Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, as that's where we all go to search the internet today. We
Mhm.
don't go to Google directly anymore in that way, or most people don't. They go research a topic in an LLM someplace, and then that that chat becomes the recommender of websites that service those products. And so now that's now an customer acquisition channel for those merchants that choose to take advantage of it, and they all should. Um, I think there's that piece of the puzzle for sure, and then there's AI within the site. So being able to answer those questions directly, being able to make good business decisions about how to run your website. So you've got folks coming in and asking questions of your shopping assistant, and you should be able to interrogate those conversations to understand how to better create your site, better help your site. So adjust the design and layout of your site to meet what those customers want, right? So surface the product earlier, faster, so they don't even have to have the conversation. So if you can
Mhm.
talk to the agent and have a conversation with your data to understand how should I be changing my website to make my site easy to use for the customer, there's a revenue opportunity there to, sell more, increase card value, and things like that. Not to mention all the behind the scenes things that we do to use AI to help us identify problems faster and help you get them corrected quicker.
How should merchants adapt to the new AI era?
They should not wait and jump in. I think, that there's certainly the products that we build and sell to our merchants, but um, I think companies that there have been a number of studies out there that say the companies that succeed in deploying AI have leadership that understands it, and they don't think of it just as a bolt on. It's not like you're going to buy our shopping assistant, now you're in the AI era. I mean, to some extent, a little bit, it's a step, but understanding how you structure your data, and then how you run your marketing team, and then how you make sense of deploy code faster, for example. All facets of your business are really, it's a tool that can help in all facets of your business. And so really, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, whether it's e-commerce or SaaS or something else. It's really how the world works today is, all facets of the business will experience some disruption from AI, and understanding that and being able to use it to your advantage as opposed to be run over by it seems to be the thing to do.
Yeah. Sounds like AI can make things a lot easier for merchants, but what can also make it more difficult for merchants?
Um, yeah, so everyone's data, pretty much, the most merchants aren't ready for AI. So if you think about like your product descriptions and the images that you've got, there's a lot of these companies have grown up over time. They've been in business for some years, and so there's not a good standard to their data, or they went from some version of a self-hosted e-commerce package to another, and then in that transition, data fields might not be complete, or they don't have good images, or they have some but not all, and there are products with varying levels of detail in their description. That's a problem if you're trying to surface to Google or somebody else through one of these interfaces, is that the company that has structured, well organized data that makes it easy for the LLM to consume, it's going to be much more likely to recommend products from that merchant, because it's digested, it can understand the products that you've got, and then therefore know how to present them to the customer that's coming to them. And so I think that's probably the hard part, is there's a lot of correction work to be done. We help quite a bit. I mean, we ingest our merchants data onto our platform and standardize it, enrich it with additional information, and then present it back to the AIs that are searching the site, but also to the customer through our own AI service to those customers on site. So
Yeah. Who's at risk of getting left behind?
anyone that doesn't embrace it wholeheartedly and go into it. I mean, I think it's an interesting transition period. I've seen a lot. You've probably seen some of these graphs where the companies that are investing in consuming and using AI are. I don't know what the y-axis in these graphs. They always show them as like way far ahead
Yeah.
compared to everybody else. And I mean, to some extent, that I think that's true. I think there's a learning curve. This may be not obvious. Most engineers will tell you, and this is another friend shared a TikTok with me about, as an engineer, and he was talking about how companies today, I think a lot of the big companies are using it as like a shrouded get to weed out, their mm, sort of reduce their forces, is to say, oh, we're going to use AI to do these things. And when you're actually like the senior engineers, so folks that I've worked with for a long time, and we use it, um, it doesn't. It's a funny phenomenon that there've been a number of these studies where they say, oh, so for a senior engineer using AI, it takes you about 20 to 24% longer to complete any given task, but your satisfaction with the task of like having done the task is much higher. I've experienced it myself, and I don't understand it. I don't know why I'm happier at the end of the day having built the thing using AI, even though it took me longer. I think what it is that I get a higher quality result, and I feel more like it's more complete than when it's an incredibly frustrating experience to go discover all the things you need to learn a domain, or you wrap somebody's REST API for the nth time, like you do these things that in the past we just had to do them to get the job done. And now, well, all the boilerplate stuff, I just ask AI to deal with that. And then I design good test cases to prove that the thing that I've gotten it to do um, is working. And yeah, it takes a bit longer, but I think the quality of the results can be better, especially if I'm giving it, well selected sets of tasks to go after. And then owning the structure, the logic of how to get from where I am to where I want to be, and then taking good steps along the way to make sure I'm advancing that direction and that it's, provably good, right? That it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your view, what is actually making it take longer? So is it just like the AI is, maybe coming up with additional things that you can do? It says you can do this, and then it says, oh yeah, do this, this, this.
Sometimes it's the missteps, right? Where you ask it to do something and you weren't quite clear and it sort of glommed onto the wrong thing and then it walked off in some direction. It got someplace, but mostly early on, like my early experience, you kind of make those missteps less often. I think it's that. I mean, my view is I feel like the while I may I may not like the sort of like if you've written code for a long time, you get to this place where like you have this kind of there's a beauty to it. Like when you get some algorithm right, like this it just really fit, the thing that you needed and it's kind of elegant and you feel like it's an elegant solution. That stuff's kind of gone. It's not so much about the core like computer science as it is you're getting the solution for the demand of the problem that you're working in. And then it's taking longer. You're getting more complete test case coverage. You're getting, more pieces done. It's proposing creative ideas. I find that I kind of, I might wander a little bit or something new comes up as a result of interacting with it. And so, yeah, I end up more or less in the place I wanted to get to, but it definitely took a bit longer to get there. That being said, for me, being a CEO that happens to code, it's kind of a weird situation in that, well, how many minutes a day do I get, right? So it's sort of you get the gap between the meeting, and I can tell, hey, go try this out, and give it a prompt to add to the code base. I'm building a dashboard. So I can add to the code base, get it to try something while I go off and go to the meeting and like help somebody, do whatever it is I'm supposed to do. And so then it works well for me in that I get these little gaps in between where I can go tell it to do something and rather than waiting around for it to finish, recombinate or whatever, a lot always tells you those funny words. So anyway, rather than wait around for it to be done, I could just go off to my meeting and then I come back and it's like, oh, we made material progress. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, unless it paused after 30 seconds because it
Oh, that's
didn't
the
get to you
worst.
to say.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Where you want it to, yeah, when it's in automatic kind of edit mode where I've had that experience too, where you think, oh, this is great. And you like prompt it to go do a thing. And then it wants to use some command that you haven't given it access to yet. And you come back 30 minutes later and it's like, oh, I need you to tell me it's okay. And like, no, go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It,
Yeah.
it seems like they've made improvements on that where it's able to self approve a lot of the
Oh,
safer things.
sure. I like the
But
one where I feel like there's the one where it's like, yeah, it's okay this time, or yeah, just don't ask me again. Just go do it. Right.
yeah, but then it always
Yeah.
seems to ask again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is agentic commerce overhyped?
It's early days. And there's use cases that are going to be really powerful for it. I think of like B2B procurement, for example, where you could say, yeah, order this for me on a schedule, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know, overhyped. I think it's just early. And, we're all trying a variety of different things and seeing, something's going to win. I mean, disruption's here. It's just a matter of, I don't know what's going to work.
Yeah. And in your perspective, what is the truth about agentic commerce?
It's early.
It's really
I think the things that we're seeing, right? So if you look at kind of how our services are structured, for example, there's sort of the first problem you've got to solve is the data. You got to get it structured and well organized so that you can build on top of that. And then you have a collection of agents that do a variety of things, So one understands, well, what did you ask it? And then picks an agent to go route to, so just routing within the system, and then the agents talking to each other to try and craft the right response and get you an answer. I think that is, I mean, that's how we define it really in terms of it's a collection of agents working together to solve a problem
Mhm.
versus an agent out on the internet that's going to go buy something for you on your behalf. I think that feels early. I don't know that many people are really ready to go do that. I mean, you're certainly hearing about it, and yeah, we'll see.
How soon do you think it is to actually coming?
Oh, it's gonna be faster than I think it is. I'm old. So it feels to me I mean, what I love is how fast everything's moving now. It's certainly been turbo boost within our organization. So, if we just kind of look at, well, I had this idea to build, I wanted a single dashboard to understand all facets of the business, everything from, sales conversations to how support was doing and the cash flow and how the business is operating. And they all influence each other, right? And in the past, you'd say, oh, well, you'll have to go contract with, so and so company. There'll be this big integration. It'll be really expensive and all these things. But um, now you just have the idea and then you're capable, so you just go build it. And that initial version of that dashboard took about a week to create, and then I've just been iterating on it ever since as I find, "Oh, I have a blind spot. I need this piece of data to be integrated in," and now I get access to that part of the business, and I can start making sure that, our forecast for how our business is gonna function is accurate, and it's more accurate because it's based on ground truth data, right? And then things like we make in our team, we use, extensive use of Fathom, for example, to where we're recording meetings and having the transcripts, and then they all get brought into the system too. So now, the sales team goes off and has these conversations, and they don't necessarily have to. They do, say, oh well, this conversation is in this stage or whatever. But then you can actually digest the data coming out of the meeting and process it and say, oh, well, these buying signals were there. This is actually a real concept, and this is the stage that deal's in, versus having to, just take somebody's word for it, if you will. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you ever feel that since you're able to take on so many of these new things, like you can create this dashboard and you can do all these other things, does it scatter your attention too much?
I hope not. I think no. I think the thing that I would say is kind of taking my own advice there, where it's that there's something I'm worried about within the business, for example. Like, how is this functioning? It's like anything. You say, well, I think there's a problem there. The it smells like there's a problem there. So now, well, how do I answer it? Well, I go get data and then I process the data and I bring it into my worldview and I actually look at and see, is there actually a problem there and what can I do about it? Face it head on.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it's like, no. I think I probably am weird in that I don't sleep much and I do a lot of that where, um, the way I understand any given domain is I build it, right? So if I start into some piece, some new facet, something I haven't encountered before, I understand the domain through writing the code that builds the thing. And I think one thing's a little bit different today is that I still the same thing, right? But I test my understanding by building it. And then I'm just not writing the low level code. I'm just kind of mentoring the agents to go get to where I want to be, and that I have some ground truth data, which is the data in the business. And then so that gives me the ability to make forecasts and check those forecasts and validate them against the real data. And I think, yeah, there's an opportunity to be bright, shiny object, I suppose, and get distracted and not focus on the thing. But because, I mean, you put your life into something and you have these like real things that are like real problems and you want to understand them. Having access to the data and that the code more or less is free or very inexpensive now. It becomes possible to process the data in short order to be able to help you make a better decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with this agentic commerce, I
Uh-huh.
know you mentioned that a lot of people aren't ready to let it fully make the orders.
Mhm.
So at this point, what are people ready for?
Um, Yeah, so customers on the internet feel totally ready to trust AI to explain products to them and to make product recommendations and search through AI, right? That all of us. I mean, in a lot of ways, I guess the way I naively think of it is we got the internet was there, you could go anywhere you wanted, and then Google showed up and helped you find the place you really wanted to go. And now all the LLMs have shown up and said, "Oh, well, they've already been everywhere. Just ask me, and I'll tell you about it and give you some references along the way, so you can go check it out yourself." And then it's made our ability to find information exponentially faster, right? So we don't have to hunt through things, and we just ask the question and get the kind of the cliff notes, if you will, on any given topic, and then pick the direction to go dive deep and go figure it out for yourself. So
Yeah.
um,
You've talked a lot about how we can now, a lot of people are trusting these AIs to give them answers about different products. So,
uh,
do you provide services to help to optimize these clients for e-commerce?
oh yeah, that's central to our offering, right? That first piece of digesting the site's data so that we canonicalize it, we get it ready for AI, and then we enrich it with additional data, either their own, right? So they may have, blogs, or like a lot of these companies will have PDFs that are like deep descriptions of all these products that they don't necessarily make it onto the website because they get cut for, there's just no room, there's this limited structure. And so, but they have a whole lot more information about the products that they've got. But we ingest that into this canonicalized form that allows our agent to now surface it and answer questions intelligently on behalf of our customer. Yeah.
Do you also use agents to write blog posts?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm actually a prolific writer, but I'm not anymore. So, yeah, we do actually quite a bit. I mean, mostly the way that we structure this, right, is that there's a person that starts it. We have a document. One of the things that's been kind of really helpful to us is training an agent that's well versed in our documentation. So then we get asked for, we have a project team that focuses on documentation and writing documents to explain new features or how things work, or here's a customer facing problem, merchant facing problem, how would you solve that, identify that traffic, deploy one of our pieces of technology to service that problem. And then so what we do is we take there's somebody that champions it and says, oh, we need this, customers have been asking, they want this thing. And so then we'll start a project to do that. And then there'll be somebody will take it on and they'll lay down the framework of this is what has to be there, and then we'll get the agent that understands our documentation to enrich it and make it more complete, and then the team gets back together to review the result and make sure it's technically accurate and it has all the right pieces to it, and then it gets published into our documentation.
Cool. What
Yeah.
does mastering personalization mean in e-commerce today?
Oh, that's well, today it would be you've got personalized recommendations in your website. Most do. They'll buy a service, one of the services that are out there, and they'll hook into the product feed, and then they'll personalize product recommendations based on you logged in and you bought these things in the past, and then here's these products that come for you. Where I think we're going is hyper personalization. So if you kind of take the UCP example, right? So now I'm on Gemini, I'm having a conversation about some new hobby or topic or whatever, and then it's recommending websites. And now that context leads to, oh, there's a product over here. And that conversation is kind of this personalized interaction, right? Because Gemini has the context of what I've asked for, other things that I've asked for, and the like. And now it's going to help me personalize the internet for me and then answer that question. And then I think what's going to happen is we're becoming so accustomed to that, right? Like I can just go ask a question and get an answer, whether it's on my phone or my desktop, whatever, and I can go ask that question, get the answer, that we're going to start to expect out of the sites that you may become a new customer of a site through the LLM, but that you'll now go to the site, and then that site is going to start to be personalized to you. And we're going to probably expect that. There's probably not going to be, maybe it's a conversation, or there's some conversation there, but that when I go visit the website, what's there is unique to me in this time and space. So they have a new set of products that they think I might be interested in. And then they're going to structure a landing page for me. And now I'm looking at that, as opposed to, today it's kind of everybody gets this more or less the same view in the world.
Yeah. Can AI tell the difference between casual browsing and high intent?
Yes. The signals are there based on your actions and what you've done, where you just match against prior session behavior. and see that there is intent for that customer to go buy versus the casual browser. You have to surface yourself a little bit, right? So you start your session. There's some that session's going to start to look more like somebody that buys or that they want to buy a certain class or type of product.
Yeah. What's an example of how AI is increasing personalization?
Oh, I mean, what we're doing. So when you have a chat with our shopping assistant, for example, it has the benefit of your clickstream, so everything you've done in this session. And then if you had a session ID or session cookie that said who you were, now I can match back to that to say, yeah, it's Luke and he's shown up again and he bought these things in the past. And so now when it starts to surface answers to your questions, it knows what you've bought and what you've been doing in the past because you've opted in with the website, and so now they're able to deploy this information to help you find the thing you're really looking for now within the context of your history, not just this session.
Is there ever a point where the personalization becomes creepy or annoying?
Yes, of course it does. I think the creepy is more following you around. I think it's when it's unexpected. So the difference is always a fine line. It's kind of performance is not too dissimilar. I mean, you never feel creepy because the site's fast, but what someone determines like a slow site. So if you're on your phone and you have terrible cell coverage and you go visit a website and it might come up a little faster than you expected and you'd think, "Oh, it's fast," even though in an absolute sense it's slow, right? But because you're on the side of a mountain with poor cell coverage, you think your mind, you just interpret, you feel like it's fast because you had this expectation that it was going to be slow. And then now it actually comes out a little faster than you thought. You're like, oh, it seemed pretty fast. But if you were at your desktop on your, fiber connection, wired connection, and it takes that long, you're like, man, this site is so slow, right? Because you
Yeah.
expect it to be instantaneous because you're practically on the backbone and like this should be fast, right?
Why is finding products still frustrating online?
That's a great question. Um I think there's a lot of noise. So you know, marketing. I think it's kind of this marketing. I don't want to blame marketing, but it is sort of where people there's this tendency to sort of oversell or overhype something that they have more capability or it's better than it is, and then so then it could get confusing because there aren't agreed. There's no structure to the language that we use, right? And so then because there's no concrete set of rules about how somebody describes their product or what their product is, then if you're using like a simplistic kind of search, it's hard to find, right? It's hard to disambiguate the things that say they're a thing versus they really are a thing. And
Mm,
I think it's kind of that. And then what I think the best we can do is to present um, better data, more accurate data about the products that merchants are selling, and then understanding your intent, right? Like what, because a merchant doesn't want to service product to you or waste time really servicing your session if there's no intent to buy or you're not an ongoing customer. They really want to understand what it is you're looking for and get you to the right place quickly, right? Because then that's beneficial, right? Then they're going to convert you and be a happy customer, and then you're going to come back and tell people about it, tell people where you got it because you had a great experience. And so, to the extent that we can marry intent to products that match that intent and do it quickly, it's a great place to be.
yeah. Why do shoppers leave early when they want to buy?
There's probably a variety of dimensions. I mean, one, they want to ask a question. There's no means to ask the question. And so they want to figure out some fact, right? Like they're gonna go someplace, maybe they're buying a jacket and they like the jacket, but they're going someplace where it rains all the time. They want to make sure it's waterproof and the evidence isn't there. I mean, it's kind of a silly example. That stuff's usually pretty prominent, but there's some fact that they need to know. It's sort of the decision criteria they have, whether they've written it down or told somebody about it. They have a decision criteria and they can't get to that fact. So then they have to do this discovery of, well, how do I they want to get the question answered and they can't. They were ready to buy, but they can't answer the question. What are they going to do? The first thing they're going to do is go to an LLM, take your pick. and they're going to ask the question about the product there. And unless you're the manufacturer of that product, even if you are the manufacturer, somebody that answered the question and the LLM can answer it because they went to that website, they're going to provide that link. And now that customer, you go to that merchant because they answer the question and they'll click the link and say, "Oh, I'll buy that one," right? And
Yeah.
so I think, I mean, that's one example. There's many. I think frustrating sales experiences where the site's slow or the checkout has too many steps in it, it's not efficient, that kind of thing happens too. But yeah, I think a lot of it's they can't find the answer to the question they're looking for, or they want to compare it to other products and they do their comparison and there's not enough to compare against, so they can't make it. They don't feel like they're making a good decision, so then they go try to make that comparison and then they end up landing somewhere else.
Yeah. How do you prevent the AI from recommending the wrong product?
We have a lot of talks about this. Um, we have a precision and recall. Like on the in a historically, you've got um, product search, right, where the customer they come in, they'll put like keywords in for product search, right, and then you're matching a broad, the marketing person for the website wants to have as many products returned in the search result as possible, right? Because there's something in there, clearly something in there they want to buy. But then on the other side, you've got this precision aspect to it where um, they have they're asking a very specific question, right? And those are actually it's challenging, right? Because you want to make sure that you're answering the question accurately and that the only things you're recommending fit that category, right? And then so there's a tension between the two, and there's a lot of work that goes into how we do it, where we overlay like a lot of context onto the query to make it so that we're very precise as we can be, to the products that we're recommending. And then we do a lot of testing too when the customers are preparing to go live with us. We'll do a lot of validation or stock set of queries, to get at the various aspects of the shopping assistant to be able to how are we doing both from a yeah we found products, yeah we can answer the questions, yeah it's like sort of validation that the data has been processed correctly, and we can take whatever the internet's going to throw at us.
You've previously said that some companies are running AI on broken data. What do you mean by that?
um well, that it's the things that we do with the CDP to correct it. So you may have holes in the data, you may have some short description or not a complete understanding of the product, and that
Mhm.
merchants don't necessarily, they're structuring, they have a design for their page, and they're not necessarily presenting all the information on one page because it kind of would distract the user and make them not want to, um, they don't get to what they're really looking for. So depending on how big a catalog they have too, I mean, you may have variety of levels of completeness to that because it I think a lot of merchants, their products were added organically over time, and that their admins were, you had different people doing it, and there's not necessarily a data quality standard to how it was added. So some products might have lots of depth, but only a sub portion of it's presented on site, whereas other products have minimal data on site. And so that varying quality of the products is kind of the broken data. That's the part that it's not well structured and canonicalized so that it's easy to digest and understand what's there. And like there's always, the same fields with, description and like, and so anyway, that diversity that may exist in your database is the thing that's getting in the way of supporting this functionality. We usually, I mean, in our onboarding process, the first thing we have to do is digest all that data and then enrich it and standardize it and make sure it's complete. And then
Mhm.
the one we're finding is kind of the hardest in this is visual search, and that we have a very good visual search algorithm that works quite well. But when you don't have complete coverage of images on your website, for all your products, and or multiple pictures of your products and different poses and whatever's relevant to your industry, it impedes your ability to satisfy visual search because you just don't have enough visual data to marry it, right? So now customers showed up and said, "Hey, I want this," and you can't answer the question because you don't have a complete coverage of images on site.
Why is first party data becoming so important?
um well, it's always important. So I think for us, the big significant piece is that clickstream data. So the fact that we have proxies sit in between the internet and your application. So we've been using the clickstream data to defend the sites that we work with for the longest time, and now we're discovering there's additional marketing value to the clickstream data. So understanding, even in a general sense, who's looking for what products and how they're visiting the sites. That information is incredibly valuable for us to understand intent and help inform an intent based decision.
What is AEO?
Uh, uh, that is answer engine optimization, is the acronym. And it's really, how do you get Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini to surface you in a response? And one of the big aspects there is that canonicalization of the data. You've got structured data, it's all there, it's complete. And that when they come calling and answering that question, you've got the data they're looking for so that they can surface it and use it to help answer the question that's been asked of them.
What makes a product catalog AI readable?
um, so primarily it's that, it's back to that canonicalization, right? It's that you can respond with this structured JSON that says, here's all my data and here's all the fields and they're well labeled and the content's accurate and there's enough content, you've got coverage.
Okay, cool. Uh, could AI eventually own most of the customer journey?
No, I don't think so. I mean, could it? Yeah. So to some aspect, right? So let's say it kind of depends, in my opinion, it depends on your journey as the customer, right? So some people are going to favor it. They want to have a chat conversation and ask a question and like go dig and then go find the product and use this independent broker to get there.
Mhm.
Sure. Others might use it like to surface a variety of candidates, and then they go visit the site and they want to interact with the site. They want to understand who they're buying from. And then so there's that. And then I mean, so technically the answer to the question is yeah. I mean, you that's what UCP is about, is making it so you can surface a checkout from the answer engine and then take it all the way to completion. I think ultimately that may be new customer acquisition, but that I think customers are going to go back to the merchant website and ultimately want to, revisit to go buy a new product, right? They are in that space. They buy products in that space. They get to be a customer and a long time, sort of lifelong customer of that merchant. And so then they want to talk to that merchant and interact with the merchant directly versus, you know, it feels to me that the obvious, in my opinion, is that the LLM has become the replacement for search, and that when I want to go discover something new, I go there. But then when I go to the merchant website, I'm looking for what they have, not necessarily, it's not necessarily a discovery problem, right? So,
Yeah,
an opinion though, I don't, who knows?
yeah.
Yeah.
What usually breaks during a traffic spike?
What usually breaks?
Yeah.
Um, Depends on what the site was built with. Often it's the database. You under provision the database, you have more checkouts, or you have a lot of cache miss, and that drives database load, and that ultimately puts you over the top. Um, it can also, I mean, there's a variety of choices there, right? From the application under provisioned application servers, right? So you don't have the ability to auto scale. Yeah, any of those resources can cause a challenge.
Wow, yeah. Why do flash sales and launches still cause, crashes?
No idea. It shouldn't, but it always does. It's the age old thing, right? Where I think it's that ultimately, um, the tools have existed for the longest time to make people very successful in driving high volumes of traffic. I mean, you see these kind of things where, somebody has a viral moment. The fact that we have the term viral moment, somebody has a viral moment. And if the marketer has never experienced that, they can't understand the complexity involved in surfacing a site that's capable of handling that traffic. We used to have a customer that would regularly get on the USA Today, or it was Al Roker, loved the ham. So anyway, but they would have these like public events that, when you have somebody on a national TV broadcast, you're going to have three massive spikes of traffic if they're, if people watch them and they're of national interest because when the program airs. So the East Coast shows up, and then the Midwest shows up, and then California shows up. And then that huge spike, if you've never been through that, somebody could say, "Oh, isn't this great? Oprah's going to talk about my thing or whatever." And then if you were uninformed, you might think that that's a great thing. But if you actually know, well, the kind of reach that Oprah has, that if she says, come check out my product, come check out this product, you have to build pretty massive infrastructure to be able to support that and make it happen, or you're going to have a bad day. So, yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
makes the commerce traffics harder than regular websites?
Um, Regular websites typically are static. So even though you may have dynamic elements, right? It's pretty common to build website where I could serve it from disk, right? I could have it in S3 or something like that and just serve it straight up. In a e-commerce website, and especially when you have some regulatory thing, like you've got to have a price that's up to date. Some of my customers, they have to have prices that there's laws about how old the price can be, where it has to be current, or the product content, like what's in the product has to be current. Well, that kind of puts these dynamic requirements on you that you can't just service, a static page and hope for the best. You actually have to have this dynamic content that's built on the fly when that person comes to visit. So you have this big spike that happens and you need a lot of dynamic content. If you're not clever with your caching strategies and how you built out the site in the first place, you'll create weird bottlenecks within either the application cluster or the database, and the site breaks.
What's the craziest spike you've ever seen?
Um, Craziest. Well, there's the I think it's out there. Our customer Trulieve, I think it was public. Early days with them, they would move like the whole state of Florida would basically show up on Mondays and Wednesdays. And lately it's 420. But that was a massive change in volume. And then the other one is some of the Boolean sites, they'll move like the price of gold goes up a lot or goes down a lot. And I mean, they can just one day, all of a sudden you're doing 10, 12 times the volume. And that volume was already high to begin with. And then you make it 12 times higher. It's Black Friday, in June for no reason other than the price of gold changed. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those are the hardest to deal with because um, we have a lot of structure in place now to handle like caching strategies to make it so that those things aren't a problem. But that kind of when somebody can move, we're in it, and it's important. Like if it's an attack, it's one thing because if you're getting attacked, you'll service the net. You'll figure out what the network it's coming from, and you'll just turn off the networks, and now all of a sudden it's fine. But if it's yeah, it could be, the whole world shows up to find out what the price of gold is today. Like that's a nightmare to deal with. But you build like we build structures in place to make it so we can handle the volume. So
How big of a problem are bots in e-commerce?
huge. I mean, probably the biggest negative to LLMs is that anybody could take a llama and then just go fine tune a model on top of it, which means they're going to go get data. So what are they going to do? They're just going to come from some random AWS or Azure IP and start scraping your website. But it's not just them; it's everybody else like them, and they come up and show up as some modern or common Chrome user agent, so it looks like people, but you've got to do some traffic analysis to figure out it's coming from this network, and that's clearly not one of those services, and so therefore you want to block and filter out that traffic. It's annoying because they'll screw up your cache too, so they'll shove and ask for a bunch of pages that nobody wants, right? Because they don't know, so they'll get your whole sitemap and then start crawling your sitemap, and now they're populating your cache with garbage. And so now real people show up and they want the same things that the real people want, but it's not in cache anymore. And because it's been filled up with this garbage that the scraper, went and asked for. So, and it's pervasive and it's just getting worse. Yeah.
And then, like, on the one hand, you have the bots that are scraping, but what about if you have someone who's using a bot to just purchase something? Is it easy for you to differentiate between those 2?
Well, yeah. So the sessions of the scraper looks pretty unique because they're just visiting every page on the sitemap almost in alphabetical order. And so there's no common links, there's no rationale to the traffic. It just looks like weird. And it doesn't look like what everybody else is doing. Whereas the agent at least is following a common path, right? They may not be browsing quite in the same way, but they're making the same API calls. They're like progressing through a checkout or, navigating to a product page and then ultimately adding to cart and buying.
Yeah. What is a carding attack?
Um, that's pretty pervasive, like e-commerce, right? Everybody's afraid of DDoS, but we see more carding attacks. Or in e-commerce, there's always a profit motive. These guys, they handle people's credit card information, right? And so, even if it's third-party tokenization, what happens is in that kind of an attack, you've got somebody acquired a list of credit cards. So there's kind of the first person that infiltrates the site and steals the credit cards. Then they sell the list to somebody else who then uses the list of credit cards to go validate and test the cards to find, well, what are the good ones, and then that haven't been reported yet. And then they sell those to somebody else to commit fraud. Well, so in that middle one, where you've got the person that has the big list of cards, they got to prove that the cards are good. And so what they end up doing is they find something cheap on your website and they start trying to buy it 100,000 times with different credit cards, right? And so those are, yeah, I mean, the worst day is when Braintree calls you and says, "Yeah, we're going to turn off your ability to process credit cards because you've had too many declines," and then the merchant freaks out, and you got to work with them to put the defenses in place if they haven't, because they obviously didn't have them ready, and help them overcome that scenario.
What are the defenses for something like that?
Yeah, mostly it's finding the attack. If it's a new that kind of new thing, you're just trying to find what sort of attack it is, and finding the commonality of the behavior, and then blocking the commonality.
How do companies usually realize that they're under attack?
Usually, we tell them. So, um, it's not uncommon that we'll see either a performance challenge, something like that, right? Like one of our alarms goes off saying, the site started responding slowly, which is kind of a bad way to discover, right? Because it means you've got a lot of. But we have some monitoring tools that we typically put in place for customers where you look for the payment path and you look for an anomalous set of declines. So normally, somebody fat fingers a credit card or whatever, that stuff happens all the time. And you'll have just sort of this regular process that's noisy. It's not terribly, it's kind of small and just the normal stuff. And then there'll just be this big spike. And so when that spike transitions, that's when our monitor goes off and notifies everybody. And there's something here. Just go in and find the pattern and shut it down.
How do you block the bots without hurting the regular customers?
Y- Usually, what it's that same kind of notion where you're looking for a pattern.
Yeah.
Typically, it's like they're coming from a common network, or an infiltrated set of routers, or there's something common to them, like how the traffic's presenting itself. Not uncommon to find some data center. Maybe somebody had some servers that were compromised in some data center, and then all of a sudden the botnet's coming from there and high volume. So.
Mhm. Is AI making fraud better or worse?
Um, it's yet to be seen. I think on the one hand, um, using AI, I don't know. Actually, I think it's
Yeah.
with the right defenses, it's kind of a non-issue, right? I mean, I think we all expect that someone's going to use agentic. Basically the fraud's going to move, and I'm going to compromise your agent and then make it buy a bunch of stuff, right? Something like that. Where, um, yeah, we try to,
Mhm.
I don't think, it's all new, so we're not so sure. Like the randomization, like if you knew what you were doing with, common kind of numerical optimization things, you could have built some bots that were fairly sophisticated. Nobody's done that, so I don't know that that means it's not going to happen. It's just hasn't happened. We see some, that there's sometimes you'll see a sophisticated actor show up and try to present as real world buying behavior, and um they're not, you know but
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, I kind of expect it's coming. It's just a matter of time where somebody basically uses the challenge right now, though, is that it kind of the payoff's not there. It would cost you more to use it to attack somebody than it would the value from the back end, right? Like just the amount of money you'd spend to build that kind of an attack would it's it's much more expensive than just doing the brute force, and the brute force succeeds. So you don't have to be that sophisticated. So
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about with these new agentic, kind of like open source projects where there's like a
Open claw.
yeah, well, kind of like that, but
Yeah.
then the ones that are like more specifically towards like penetration testing
Sure.
and
Yeah.
yeah, kind of essentially hacking and yeah, just different attacks that can be done. And so we're seeing, some of those are getting better. You have
Yeah.
these better frameworks and the better model that's underlying it. So
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting period here coming up. I mean, I think Anthropic's doing some really good things where, I mean, certainly providing mythos to companies to um, plug holes. So as it's out there identifying new exploits, and giving people the opportunity to close those who don't create Armageddon. Great. Um,
yeah,
they're not going to get to all of them, and it's going to be a big scramble, I think, right after it gets released to discover and patch whatever holes are there. So
yeah,
it should be interesting.
yep.
Yeah.
Why did you build Webscale around not forcing a replatform?
Why? Well, I think primarily what we wanted to make sure, well, we wanted the problem that we're after, right? So where we're focused on complex commerce, um, that complexity could often be scale. And sometimes you'll see customer like merchants think, oh, we've hit the limit, platform can't do it, whatever open source platform they're using, they can't get to the scale that they want, and we've got the data that proves them. No, it is actually possible to handle just about anything with these platforms. It's a matter of um, building the infrastructure to make you capable of servicing the traffic. And yeah, that's been, it's our long-term customers. It's what they love about us, is that we help them architect a solution that can service just about any volume of traffic.
Why are companies afraid of replatforming?
Oh, it's expensive if you think about that, right?
Yeah.
The cost is huge to achieve that. There's always a business decision to be made, right? Where if you're a declining business, it might seem attractive to go to a lower cost platform. That happens, and there are some cases where it's legit, right? Like if you actually have what I'd characterize as a simple commerce problem, you have maybe 1,000 products and you don't have a huge volume of traffic, and you're not too worried about the payment, your payment costs. Fine. It's a simple solution. You should use a simple platform that doesn't cost you very much to service. But as soon as you get into high volume or legal requirements, or the volume of checkouts is, we have a lot of customers where the products are very expensive. And so then, you can't tolerate any tax on a checkout. You need um, open source and ownership of the platform. So another thing that's kind of unique in our world too is it's not uncommon to have customers. A lot of our big customers, they own the cloud environment, and the ones with good governance, they'll own the cloud environment and they'll invite us in to go do our work there, and that's a fine place to be.
What's the volume of transactions that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, so we handle about 10 billion in e-commerce transactions annually on our platform, across all environments. We got some big customers that do some reservations too, so we kind of take that into consideration as well. But yeah, really high volume of transactions. I lost track. We used to count and track, like, well, how many terabytes of data egress and things like that. And now it's such a big number that I don't know.
Yeah.
we don't track much anymore. I mean, I think the most interesting, just for scale, we have one customer that pretty regularly oscillates between 7,000 requests a second to about 20,000 requests a second, which is a huge number in this space, right? Like that, anybody hearing that's got to that.
What was the first version of Webscale?
The first version. Well, um, so when I founded the company, I named it Lagrange Systems after the Lagrangian multiplier method we use to solve the decentralized resource allocation problem. And we started life in that, right? Just proxy service. And then on our way to market, we built a control plane to service it. And I think the first interesting thing we did, which now is kind of commonplace, frankly, is to separate the data path from the control path. So data plane from the control plane. So think of a data plane, that's the 10 billion in transactions that flows through it, right? So that uh, that always on, distributed, decentralized, it's just got to be there no matter what, right? Or else customers aren't doing business. The
Mhm.
control plane doesn't have quite the same availability requirements because it's the control plane. It's not making real time decisions. I mean, it will make some scaling decisions, things like that. But in terms of just having the site up and servicing, the data plane is sufficient. And the control plane is really how you look at observe the data. So the metadata of the request you're processing. We've always done this where, the data plane processes the request and then all the logs go into the control plane, and then customers get on the control plane and watch what happens on their website down to, what TLS version this particular IP address was using to connect to the website and things like that. So all of the data is there available, and you're able to introspect on it to understand what's happening with your website. It's kind of how we discover any of the attacks going on within a customer or emergent behavior within the network, and then how we control. We then come back and, usually you'll find something. So I don't like the behavior. I don't think it kind of acceptably used. And then you'll go back and put in a web control to block that or adjust how the site responds to that.
How did you get your first customers?
That's a So I built a system we called Pat. Me and a co-founder went off, and um, what we did was to use a couple of technologies that existed to both surface the e-commerce domains using technology we were interested in, and then we watched them as we just built a system to just pull them as just anonymous requesters on the internet and say, "You there?" and request their homepage. And when we would then store the results, and we'd just track something like 150,000 domains or so, and then we would just watch them, and we'd look for if they were down, and we knew, or if they were too slow in responding, we could characterize their performance and availability and know that they had a problem that we could, because they use the technology that we work with, and we knew they were slow, and we knew that or they had a problem, right, with their website. Then we could go reach out to them later on and go ask them for, hey, looks like you got a problem, maybe we can help. So
Nice.
yeah.
That sounds good. Did any of them say, "Oh, this is creepy" at first?
Yeah, we did. That came up. There was certainly that sort of period where sales had to figure out how to use the data. Like if somebody's website's down and you call them, first they think you caused it. So that's not okay. Can't do that. We don't do this anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
But so you got to wait, right? You got to say, "Hey, I see you. If there's anything we can do to help, we can help." But mostly it's finding the right timing to when to go back to them to reach out to say, hey, let me know when it's a good time to talk, or, follow up with them the week after and say, hey, we saw we went to try to visit your website and it was down. And last week we figured it took you a second. Anyway, this is the kind of thing we do. And we'd be happy to help. Yeah. Those are the early customers. I think we got to our first million in revenue off that tack. So, yeah,
Wow.
mobilizing data to success. Yeah.
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 Cool. So and now, what's different between before how you did it versus now how you get your customers?
Yeah, right. Today we work with primarily through our partners. So we have an extensive network of partners that we work with that build the websites that we host, and so we've built up that trust with them, where they know that if they come to Webscale, we've got them, and we're going to be there, and we're going to go fight with them and support them and help them with the merchant and help solve the merchant's problem. We basically kind of all care about the customer deeply, and as a result, um, yeah,
Mhm.
they know what to expect when they work with us, and we have some long-standing relationships as a result of
Yeah.
that.
When did this go from an interesting hobby to, wow, this could actually be a business?
Yeah, yeah, it was never really a hobby, I would suppose. Just my background. It went from you know that paper was very interesting. Like that concept was interesting and compelling, and there were a few of us that we're like, yeah, we could do something. And then when we saw, I think we knew we were on to something, certainly when we got our seed round financing to build it out. And then, um, yeah, and then I think the real eye opener was working with some of the early software products that we host actually, where we proved to them that it could work and that oh, you could host one of these things. Like when we first started in e-commerce, the providers of these things, the makers of these things, were like swore up and down. You had to be on hardware. It had to be on a rack someplace, and you couldn't. It couldn't possibly work in the cloud. And then we, we're like, all right, well, we'll take that as we proved them wrong, and then like, oh, and now it's just, it just granted, like it's just the way it works. Why would you rag mount? Rag mount is so awful, right? So yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's the hardest part about building infrastructure software?
The nines. So availability is a big deal, right? So um, yeah, I think the hardest thing is to take someone else's code, right? We had no part in the creation of the code that we have to operate, right? So, and I'm talking about the customer, the merchant's code. So the merchant builds a website, and that's where our partner comes in. They built the website, and then they hand that to us, and we have to take this thing and deliver on time and keep it available no matter what happens, even though there could be God knows what in that code. Now we've got some good partners, and so they tend to build good code, and we've got good customers that have been with us for a long time. And so I think that's probably the hardest part, is that you're now taking something. There's three parts to that equation. There's the merchant that wants the thing, there's the software developer that built it, and then there's us, and we're trying to deliver it into the internet. And when something goes wrong, they always call us first, because we're the kind of the tip of the spear in that respect. And then we have to work closely with the partner, especially if it's a code issue. We have very experienced developers that understand their environment, some core developers that worked on those platforms, that we can then go back into the partner and help them and say, hey, you got a problem right here. This thing that we just experienced is because of this piece of code. And here's what we got to do to get this right, and work with them to get it right.
Yeah.
So the biggest challenge is not like there's one person that's responsible. It's three parties, and the merchant is responsible too. If they put onerous demands on the partner, and the partner doesn't know enough to say that's crazy, we can't do that on a schedule, or there's more complexity here. We have to work on this. Like it's going to take longer, right? They have to be reasonable about inexperience as well. And then collectively, we can do great things. But it's the fact that you get these three different parties to work together to get to the outcome, probably the biggest challenge in the whole thing.
How has your role changed from being CTO to CEO?
I don't get to just make up cool stuff and say, let's go do this anymore. I have to pay attention to the business, frankly. I mean, I've always participated in sales calls. It's like the technical, answer questions and things like that and do that kind of thing. But I think now, yeah, it's very much like this dashboard that I had to build. That's me doing what I do, which is what do I do? I build code to understand the domain. So understanding the domain and focusing on the business side, where the money's coming from and where it's going to, and make sure more comes in than goes out.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Cool. So, do customers care more about performance, scalability, or personalization?
Performance kind of dominates, right? Because they know that if they're slow, they might as well be dead. People have no tolerance. I mean, yeah, there's relativity, right? You're on a poor network connection, whatever, but people don't have tolerance for slow websites. And so just even though, it might be for an individual, it may not be such a big deal, but on mass, you get people that you'll lose them. So performance is probably number one. Scalability is kind of a 1A, because if you're very fast but you have no ability to scale, then a lot of people show up and you're slow, right? So it's sort of scalability and support of performance. And then finally, personalization is kind of 1B. It's a hard problem because you have to be fast and scalable, and then you've got to be dynamic enough to give you exactly what you want, so that you find what you want. Because even if I'm fast for an individual page or repeated page views, if I got to look through 30 pages to find the thing I'm looking for, because you haven't understood my intent and presented me with exactly what I'm looking for, who cares you were fast? It took 30 clicks to get there. So it's not really fast for me. It's actually slow. So in a way, that's really the other two are just sort of transformations on performance. So yes, the site has to be fast, but it has to be intent driven so that it gets what I want quickly. And if it takes a little bit longer because I type in a query and I get the little three dots coming and now there's my answer to the intent, that's actually pretty good, right? That may take a few seconds, but those few seconds were well spent because I didn't have to click through 50 things to find the thing I'm looking for. So as the customer, I got there much faster than you were really fast, but you maybe click 20 times to go find the thing.
Yeah. What objections do your customers typically give you? Like
About which product?
oh, yeah, whichever product you think.
Yeah, so objections mostly anymore, like for the AI products, we don't really get objections. We get, a lot of interest because everybody's being told, go figure out how AI plays in your world, right? And the thing I look for is I want to be your easy button for the application of a shopping assistant on your website. Sure. I don't necessarily want to be the easy button that you can say, yeah, I'm using AI, because then you're not really going to be invested in the outcome. And you're just kind of checking a box that's all hype. I'd much rather find the customer who's got a real world problem that they know um, they have to help customers find product faster, right? Or help the customer support agents get to the right answer and get a consistent answer and have precision in the answer so that they're offering better service to their customer. I mean, it kind of that's probably more it is the, you know, I don't know, my mom pushes this on me, like the best thing you can do is to provide more service at a lower price. And so if we're keeping our prices under control and providing more service and capability, we're on.
How does Webscale compete against the other e-commerce, website or against the other e-commerce companies?
Yeah, we're friends with the competitors. We know them, right? I think each has their own niche, the place where they excel, right? We're kind of more on high end, big complexity, large volume sites that have big scaling problems. Those are the ones that we tend to work with. Whereas I think our primary competitors are more in they're not necessarily dynamically scalable. It's slower in that regard, or it's more fixed in terms of size and content. I think the one place that we're very different is we've historically been very data centered, data focused, and actually in your face with the data for the customer. Like when something goes wrong, right? If I give you my opinion about, well, I think it was this, but I don't have the data to prove it, then you can argue with me. But if I show you what happened, because yeah, you said you had a slow experience, but I show you that, well, no, everybody that visited your website at that time, they all had a great experience. Maybe your ISP is having a problem, right? They're like, we're having a data conversation as opposed to my
Mhm.
opinion about what might be.
Yeah. When it comes to that personalization chatbot tool, what stops people from just plugging it into ChatGPT? So what stops them from just using ChatGPT instead of your personalization tool?
Yeah, that's probably the thing I'm kind of most concerned about right now is the market's noisy at the because lots of people are doing these kind of one-off solutions where they're creating assistants that aren't software products. They're kind of, yeah, put ChatGPT on my website and make some API calls to OpenAI and, hope for the best. And they're not doing the things that need to be done. Like on the surface, it might demo well, it might be kind of interesting from oh yeah, it seems like it could work. But when you actually go and use some rigor to test the thing, you discover, oh, well, it doesn't know the difference between these two nuanced products, or it hasn't actually digested my product set correctly, or it hallucinated these five things. Like that's where I think we're going to enter in. We're in this kind of noisy phase here where everybody's got an assistant of some kind, but not everybody's got the rigor in actually creating real products. I think it's going to be short lived, frankly, because um,
Mhm.
you're going to learn right away like these things aren't products, just toys, basically.
Yeah. What does AI e-commerce look like 3 years from now?
I think we're going to see a lot more personalization, where the sites have it's just baked in and expected of the platform. You're not buying somebody else's service to go get personalization. It's just part of the environment. And
Mm,
I think we're going to see a lot more change in websites faster. So just pretty much, I mean, that's a universal statement of software projects, right? Where um, people can have an idea to add a feature to the website. It's going to be there the next day. Like I think we're going to iterate as fast as we're moving today. I think there's a whole nother gear to find where we are deploying. Everybody's deploying constantly now, but we're going to be servicing pretty significant functional changes in very short periods of time, and that life cycle, like a feature life cycle, is just going to get compressed, and everything's running faster, which is going to put pressure on folks tools, right? So we've got a lot that are built in there from our experience about, well, you serve as a cluster, you put a cluster out in the world that has this new build of code, and then when it's in the wild, you discover there's a problem and you got to roll back. Well, it's you click a button with us versus do a bunch of work. So I think the pressure on your tooling to keep up with the pace of change is going to be intense, right? You're going to experience it a lot more. And the companies that have that, you know, ability to rapidly deploy and roll back and experiment, they're going to be successful in this world as they rely on, this kind of, when you're iterating that quickly, like mistakes are going to get through, and part of that is being able to overcome those quickly. And I think that's going to put pressure on the infrastructure.
yeah. Will people still use websites normally in 3 years?
Yeah, this stuff doesn't move that. I mean, it moves fast. I think. Well, what's normally, I guess. Um, will websites still exist in 3 years? Yeah, of course. What's on the website, I think, is going to be the thing that changes the most. Is that you know, marketing managers are going to be excited because they're going to keep refreshing their sites and have a brand identity, but the site itself is going to change much more rapidly, and frankly, I think get to significantly more responsive for that individual user. So the website is more it makes it easier for you as a consumer to find the things you want to buy. So you have a notion of what you're looking for, and that the website's going to surface it to you much faster. What form that takes, hard to say. I mean, it could be chat, it could be, open AI, it could be um, yeah, I mean, you could see a world where, yeah, somebody's going to build an e-commerce website that's basically GraphQL only or an API only, and they integrate it into a chat and all the chat bots, and that's just how you talk to it. Sure, could be.
Wow, yeah. Do smaller teams become more powerful because of AI?
Oh, totally. I mean, that's what's happening right now, right? Is that if you take one smart, motivated person and then you give them AI to go get all the things that they want, um, there's no barriers. I don't have to wait for a meeting. I don't have to wait for somebody's opinion. I don't have to, convince somebody else. We can go try it, and we can go try it in the next 15 minutes. And that pace is incredible. And it's just going to keep getting faster and faster.
Yeah. What does Webscale look like 12 to 24 months from now?
Yeah, I think we're gonna be a lot bigger than we are now. I don't not people wise. I think part of this AI impact, right, is that the team that we've got is actually much more capable. And as we continue to see this transition into AI native for all job functions, not just the services that we provide, but the team has adopted it, and we are much more responsive to our customer. We've got a lot more data and understanding of what's going on in the business, and I think that's going to continue. So I don't think the team's going to grow substantially necessarily, but I think the work that we're doing, it's going to probably look, in my opinion, I don't know, but it feels like a lot of job functions are becoming um, more software. I like like it starts to look more like software engineering, right? Where you're creating test cases and then asking the AI to create the thing that satisfies the test case. And we're seeing a lot of that, right? Like in the support function, where it's less about domain expertise and more about your ability to create tools that service lots of customers at the same time, as opposed to being dependent on you going in and verifying something as a person on a particular box. Like making it so you can ask the AI to go check the thing and actually get you an answer. And then what that does for us is it puts us in a position to maintain human touch. And, like, I don't know if you've heard this, but in automation, right? The risk associated with an outcome kind of drives how much you'd let AI drive the bus, right? Like landing a plane. Just got back from uh, 300 people on the plane. Yeah, an AI could probably land it. Would you let it? Probably not, because you get 300 people on the plane whose lives depend on the outcome of the task. And so therefore, you want a person in the loop who's making the decision. Kind of simple example, but I think to that end, right, that kind of drives like how automated you'd be versus not. And um, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
And we'll wrap it up with this question. What do most people not understand about where e-commerce is heading?
I think merchants are being surprised in a lot of ways by how capable AI is and how pervasive it'll be within their organization. This is probably true of the world today, right? Where some companies are adopting it wholeheartedly and then understanding the people aspect of it. So allowing the people to pick up the tool and use the tool to do a better job and to get answers faster, and recognizing that smart people with this tool are capable of delivering, multiples on their productivity, right? That people are the center of this, not you see a lot of this in the news today where they talk about, AI replacing jobs and stuff. And I think it's nonsense. I mean, I get it, certainly if your job function is dependent on you entering data someplace, yeah, probably, start retooling because that job's not going to exist anymore. But if there's some creative aspect to your job and you use your brain to solve problems and communicate with people and, explain concepts to folks. I mean, the explaining concepts to folks, the translator, I mean, the LLM translation is pretty good at that, right? So like it's not just translating one language to another, it's translating, computer engineer to podcaster, right? So like there's pretty capable, right, at doing that. And so um yeah, if I think about, people are just aren't understanding the value of the tool in all aspects of business, and that if you get your team using it, they can be, multiples on their productivity. And it's not that things come out faster or that um, you need less people or something like that. It's that you get higher quality work, more creative solutions. You're exploring more of the space you're in. You're not just solving the problem. I think it's back to one of those other questions you asked, like, well, if it takes 24% longer, where'd the time go? And it's well, I may have tried 10 different things and landed on the one. And when it was just me without AI, maybe I would have hit on that one, but maybe I'd have hit on number two or three, and or even number 8, right? Not like pretty far down the list, like kind of substandard. But now I've got access to something that allows me to experiment a lot faster, and I can try things that I wouldn't have been able to try, and I can run faster. And sometimes I'm even finding myself taking on tasks where I wouldn't have said yes to that because I don't have the time to do that. Like, how could I go do that thing? But now I know that, oh well, most of the grunt work will be done for me, and so I can use it to great effect and be productive.
Awesome. Yeah, great answer. Great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.